We were all born and ushered into the fold. All of us, all of America's children, our mouths taught to form the words and sing to America and its promise. We were taught of greatness and the spirit of our people and gratitude for being part of it all. Exceptionalism, and like thirsty children in a desert, we drank the image of cool freedom from cups filled with hot sand, and we were fed the mirage of the shining city. And then the child wakes to a world that strays from the story we've been told, the story that has been repeated with volume and conviction to the world. The child opens its eyes and finds the exceptional nation has not accepted them, has accepted them, accepted and excluded the very people who helped build the nation, whose blood, sweat, and lives undergird its very existence. Some saw very early the darkness of the dream, the part of the story that's been edited out of the realities we were never taught and still seem unwilling to accept. We watch again and again through the generations the brave, the singular stand and fight for the America that we were assured we always were. And we deal with the lies. We bathe in them and let them drip from our saturated bodies, unable to move forward from the weight of them. But the truth cannot die. It hangs on us. It remains with us and repeats itself as we avert our eyes, but it will not be transformed until we see, until we listen to the voices that are trying to speak to us, until we change, until we are ready to find a new truth, until the pain of former generations is nothing more than a memory, rather than a painful reminder of what we continue to allow.
I don't know what most white people in this country feel, but I can only include what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, that the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians and certainly cannot trust the Christian church. I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby has anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to. Now, this is the evidence. You want me to make an act of faith, risking myself, my wife, my woman, my sister, my children, on some idealism which you assure me exists in America, which I have never seen. Good evening. I find myself, not for the first time, in the position of a kind of Jeremiah. For example, I don't disagree with Mr. Burford that the inequality suffered by the American Negro population of the United States has hindered the American dream. Indeed, it has. I quarrel with some other things he has to say. The other, deeper element of a certain awkwardness I feel has to do with It has to do with one's point of view. I have to put it that way. One's sense, one's system of reality.
It would seem to me that the proposition before the House, and I would put it that way, is the American dream at the expense of the American Negro? Or the American dream is at the expense of the American Negro? Is the question so hideously loaded that one's response to this question, one's reaction to this question, has to depend on effect, and in effect, where you find yourself in the world, what your sense of reality is, what your system of reality is. That is, it depends on assumptions which we hold so deeply as to be scarcely aware of them. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. These days, it's hard to know how long it's gonna take. These days, it's hard to know. The story's already written, I'm just living to tell it. Thoughts and emotions are rising, slowly touching the ceiling. Kick it out, swing around from the chandelier. Face your fears, here we go, give it up to him. No time to run, put the weight on your shoulders. If Lord can hear me, he would only want to know if we holding on to the plow like we do in the South. For a minute thought we was lost and the chains fell off. Hit the fall, hit the exhaust, and you can't come out until the brains allow for a sound. Solid bridges, we build them now. These days, it's hard to know how long it's gonna take. These days, it's hard to know. I pray the Lord my soul to take. These days are hard, I pray my soul be saved. See, this sin got me hot, feels like I'm starting to break till the sun got me right. Had to lay down my hate just to get to the gates and hear him say, fix your face, filter your feels, and just let me heal you with this miracle water from the atmosphere. Yeah. The same water had Moses fear until I came and divided, and he'll do it again. See, the bridges we building will beat the symptoms of the system. This spirit is never ending, so yeah, just keep building. These days are hard, I pray the Lord my soul to take. These days, yeah, it's hard to know. The Mississippi or Alabama sheriff, who really does believe when he's facing a Negro boy or girl that this woman, this man, this child must be insane to attack the system to which he owes his entire identity. Beneath then, whatever one's reaction to this proposition is, has to depend on whether or not civilizations can be considered as such, equal, or whether one civilization has the right to overtake and subjugate and, in fact, to destroy another. Now, what happens when that happens? Leaving aside rape or murder, leaving aside the bloody catalog of oppression which we are in one way too familiar with already. What this does to the subjugated, the most private, the most serious thing this does to the subjugated is to destroy his sense of reality. This means in the case of an American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white.
Today into yesterday. Joined hands side by side, marching for justice with peace fixated in our eyes. Tear gas, arrest, and brutality seem similar, and for a black man, it's all too familiar. Where can we draw the line between the past and the present when the lines have been blurred, lines smeared to a pulp? When walking past an officer, you still take a huge gulp. Afraid and fearing for your life, realizing generations before you had the same plight. You pray that our fight will be the last, with hope in our hearts, deep and vast. Kneeling, sit-ins, and freedom rides have all been warning signs, yet America views them as heinous crimes. Shouting, "I am man," just as my father and grandfather did, making sure my generation's voice is heard and never hid. Protesting today as if we were in 1965 has me questioning our entire timeline. Not learning from our past has put us where we are today, with some still dull and blind anyway. 400 years of labor and oppression still stain my days today. For when saying Black Lives Matter is met with All Lives Matter, the true progress has yet to be seen. Because for me, the fight of my ancestors is still my fight. To be seen and heard as equal is what I mean. You see, freedom of fear is what we strive for, to move into something more, so that the next generation of Black people are able to prosper joyously, without the same fears and doubts that have stained our communities before. Looking forward to the future, I hope we all win, because the union that came before us was made of sin. Human beings, we do have compassion, but it's up to us to reveal it through our passion. So rise up and be heard. We'll be on the right side of history with our positive words. Words of love and light, which I hope ends this plight.
It comes as a great shock around the age of 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you pledge allegiance along with everyone else has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. It comes as a great shock to discover that the country which is your birthplace and to which you owe your life and your identity has not, in its whole system of reality, evolved any place for you. Now we're speaking about expense. I suppose there is several ways to address oneself, to some attempt to find what that word means here. Let me put it this way, that from a very literal point of view, the harbors and the ports and the railroads of the country, the economy, especially in the southern states, could not conceivably be what it has become if they had not have and do not still have, indeed for so long, for many generations, cheap labor. I'm stating this very seriously, and this is not an overstatement. I picked the cotton. I carried it to the market, and I built the railroad under someone else's whip for nothing. For nothing.
So sick and tired of being pushed to the back of the line, waiting for my time to begin, being told that I'll never win. Ain't it a shame a society keeps on holding us back, telling us to pick up the slack? That ain't nothing new. I am far from being finished yet. And I'm of the earth, I'm of the sky, with the universe in my mind, a galaxy in my eyes. Don't you try, don't you dare, I ain't going anywhere, no. I'm just getting started. Try and tear me down, I'll always fight to stand. I'm only human, but if you take my hand, you'll see I'm not going anywhere. I ain't going anywhere. I'm not going 'cause I am far from finished. I ain't finished yet. I'm just getting started. I'm not going anywhere.
For children born in this country, raised on the hope messages found in the promises of the flag and the allegiance pledged to that flag, there's a moment when it is clear that the flag and its promises are not for them. The disaffection, the demoralization, and the gap between one person and another only on the basis of the color of their skin starts there and accelerates. It accelerates throughout a whole lifetime to the present when you realize you're in your 30s and are having a terrible time managing trusting your countrymen. By the time you're 30, you've been through a certain kind of mill. And the most serious effects of that mill are, again, not a catalog of disasters. The policemen, the taxi drivers, the waiter, the landlady, the landlord, the banks, the insurance companies, the millions of details, 24 hours of every day that spell out to you that you are a worthless human being. It's not that. It's by that time you've begun to see it happening in your daughter or your son or your niece or your nephew.
When did I learn that the flag and the allegiance to that flag wasn't for me? As a black woman in America, you learn that lesson again and again. You just refuse to accept it. I learned it when me and my family were under attack in Haiti, and the U.S. Embassy didn't care that we were another black family this was happening to. I learned that my shade of blackness mattered. Had I been light-skinned or Hispanic passer-offer, I would have been offered choices. I learned it every time my fellow light-skinned actors who worked as white, black, Hispanic, and or other, because they're ethnically ambiguous, when they complain to me for being a minority. I learn it when I drive through the South and come up with my master plan if I'm ever to be pulled over. I learn it. I learn it. I lie. I don't have to learn it. I live it. But I want to live in peace. It's not until my non-black colleague or non-black friend says something so arrogant that I'm reminded of my blackness and the levels of it. Their comfort levels of it. A terrible time managing, trusting my countrymen. I don't want to have a terrible time trusting my countrymen.
What is crucial here is that unless we manage to accept, establish some kind of dialogue between those people whom I pretend have paid for the American dream and those other people that have not achieved it, we will be in terrible trouble. I want to say at the end, the last, is that that's what concerns me most. We are all, at least I like to think we are, relatively civilized, that we can talk to each other on certain levels so that we can walk out of here assuming the measure of our enlightenment, or at least our politeness, has some effect on the world. It may not. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. Until the moment comes that we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black. That on that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other. And that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until that moment, there's scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it by their very presence will wreck it. And if that happens, it is a very grave moment for the West. What more do they want? I don't want to be sad. I don't want to wake up each day and wish I could go back to sleep in fear of the headline statuses and tweets. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to write a sad song. Blues notes and minor chord progressions, therapy and late night music sessions, teardrops and blank expressions. I don't want to. You see, my ancestors didn't choose the chains, the whip, or the fields. They didn't build the country and graciously offer its yield. They didn't volunteer to work for free or apply for a job in slavery. They didn't agree to any of it. But they did it. And it happened. They were chained and slaved and whipped and sold and robbed and tricked, and yet we haven't quit. What more do they want, you ask? I don't need charity or pity or handouts or tears. I just need you to acknowledge that the years of injustice and violence and hate are directly linked to the events of today, that white skin spit at an entire people and the opportunity was never equal. I don't want to be right. I don't want to believe that the history books don't quite teach history, that the lives of my people remain still a mystery because someone decided Black history wasn't American history. I don't need a special month. I don't want to argue. I don't want to argue the value of a human life or discuss what our parents thought was wrong or right. I just want to live. I want to live in a world where we don't pretend to be colorblind. I want to see your skin, and I want you to see mine, and you'll see that I'm Black and I'm brown and I'm white, but choose then to judge me by what is inside. India told me, inside, I am light. I don't want to hate you. I don't want to hate you or think that you hate me, but all the things that are happening lately have me terrified. I don't want to be afraid. I don't want to be afraid to shop or walk down the street or sit in the park or lay down to sleep, but I am. Do you know what that's like? What more do they want, you ask? I want to end the cycle. I want to create a world where my children won't have to feel this way, a world where it won't pain someone to say that Black lives matter. Are you uncomfortable? I know the feeling. Maybe you think by admitting I matter that somehow you won't and your whole world will shatter. I promise I don't want U.S. history the sequel. I just want for once to be treated as equal. What more do they want, you ask? I want my Black life to matter, but my Blackness to not. And that might just challenge all you were taught, but just for a moment, imagine with me a place that was truly the land of the free. What more do they want? You ask. I just want to matter.
The Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they maligned so long. What white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger. I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you've got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there is no difference between the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you, the white people, invented him, then you got to find out why.
Well,
and the future of the country depends on that, whether or not it's able to ask that question.